and delighted you can come and share in this, this debate. Also to our three candidates, Rob Duhamel here, Jeremy Masson, and Peter McClinton. Thank you for coming along. I'm not sure you had any choice really, but anyway, you come and you're here, so thank you very much for being part of this. And I'll ask them in a moment just to speak. And thank you also to the school for letting us use the hall this evening, and for Denise, who's our timekeeper and therefore in charge. Rob, Jeremy and Peter have drawn for the first to speak, and the first to speak will be Rob, and then Jeremy, and then Peter. Each candidate will be given 5 minutes as an opening speech. At 4 minutes 30 seconds, there will be a warning bell. And then at 5 minutes, they sit down. That's the plan. After those 5-minute speeches, there'll then be an opportunity to ask questions from the floor. And if you ask just to put your hand up, then I'll indicate to speak. We've got a roving mic here. We might need to find someone who is willing to be in charge of it. Anybody willing to be in charge of it? Is it working?
That'd be a bit awkward.
Thank you, thank you. And I'll just indicate who's speaking if you take it to them, and then we keep moving around. That's brilliant, I don't know how it works, but thank you anyway, there we go. Then each candidate will then have 3 minutes to answer the question. And we'll sort of vary the order as we're going along, just keep going. 2 becomes 1, and then next question 3 becomes 1, and so on. So varies the order of how they respond to each question. And then the next question will come on if there's a supplementary. Again, please put your hand up. And if we just allow the candidates to speak, we know they can't go on forever because the bell will ring, so we're safe. Can I warn you, ask you please, if your mobile phones, either turn them off or put them on silent, so they don't ring during the speeches and during questions and so on. Is that okay, folks? If there's anybody who really must, paramedic or something, that's fair enough. But other than that, if you can either turn them off or onto silent. And the plan is that if we go on that long, the meeting will close at 9:30. Are you having a final?
It's a
stab. Yeah. When we think we've got to the end and we're not at 9:30, it may well be that each one will then have 2 minutes just to wind up and sum up from their point of view. That's how it's going to proceed. Are there any questions about actually the process? Are you happy with that? Good. Okay. Thank you very much indeed. In which case, I'll ask Rob Duhamel to start and address us, please.
Okay.
Hang on a second. Here we go. You want to sit or stand? Sit.
I think I'll sit.
Okay. There it is.
Okay. If everybody agrees, you're happy, then I sit. Thank you. I am sitting comfortably. So I should get the microphone. Is the microphone switched on?
That's why they couldn't hear me. It is.
Is that better? Everybody can hear me? Okay, right. What I propose to do this evening is not necessarily to use all of my 5 minutes, because I think with the publicity that we've had this time around through the vote.je site, everybody has been studying their red leaflet. You've had individual manifestos. I posted mine to you all, and hopefully you've all had them and read them. For those of you who have been missed out, kind of late additions to the electoral roll, you can see me afterwards, and I've got some spare copies. So I propose just to deliver one message to give you a bit of a flavour of where I'm coming from this time around. With apologies to the BBC for an element of repetition, because you may have heard it on the radio programme lunchtime. I'm going to say what I said then, because I think it's still relevant. Anyone who knows me will agree that I've had a bee in my bonnet over long-term strategic planning from day one. And this is why 3 years ago I was very pleased that the Council of Ministers agreed, at my suggestion, to adopt long-term strategic planning as its 7th priority. Since then, a framework document called Preparing Our Future has been created, setting out a new way of working for ministers and islanders to put sustainability at the heart of our decision-making and to balance the economy, the environment and the social agendas in a joined-up way. More has yet to be done. The higher-level vision is yet to be agreed with the public. And this, broadly, is why I want to stand again for re-election. Having instigated the work, I think I'm best placed to be in a position to encourage it to be finished, and I wish to ensure that everyone has a say in our island's future. It's not just for the ministers, it's not just for the states members, it's all of our island's futures, and I think we really have to find ways, better ways, to make sure that our islanders' opinions are listened to before we make far-reaching decisions which will affect our livelihoods and our futures and our children's futures in years to come. So that's why I'm standing, and that's probably the shortest speech I've ever made, so it'll probably go down in history books.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for coming this evening. Many of you will know that my family have been in Jersey since the 1700s and in St Saviour's for generations. I was first elected as your deputy in 2008 and have gained a wealth of experience through serving my second term of office and helping many of you in our community. I've been able to work with other states members and have gained their respect. Firstly, by electing me to be the chairman of the Education and Welfare Scrutiny Panel, on the Planning Applications Panel, more recently, chairman of the Privileges and Procedures Committee, which is the third most important position in the States. I've been able to serve the public and meet many of my manifesto pledges through these positions. I just want to outline what I have achieved through my time. A budget has finally been obtained for crossings and traffic calming measures on Bago and local roads for 2015. I've done this with sheer persistence. Adding to the political knowledge of our students in our district through my involvement with their citizenship programme, I regularly support the schools with their events, which has enabled me to meet so many of you. On the Planning Applications Panel, I've always stood up for protecting our green fields and the character of our island, fighting for design that fits within their location, that are practical and have adequate parking, provision and amenity space, as many of these problems in the district are a result of poor planning decisions. On education and welfare scrutiny, we managed to obtain better facilities for children with autism. We also highlighted the need for the prison and health services to work together in providing necessary services for prisoners with mental health issues, which are now being addressed. As chairman of the Privileges and Procedures Committee for the last 12 months, during my short time, I brought amendments to the election law to make registration and voting far more user-friendly and flexible. We revitalised the vote.je website to enable the electorates to locate everything they need in one place, including the filming of Hustings, which I personally recommended. I brought changes to the standing orders to make the workings of the State Assembly more efficient and flexible. I obtained state approval for an independent Commissioner for Standards who will deal with the issues regarding the State Members' Code of Conduct. I also brought a proposition to the States for the public to finally be able to have their say on the code of recommendations, which were initially supported by the states, and my committee worked incredibly hard to address this. Unfortunately, this was amended by the states at the last minute, which has resulted in the current referendum, despite my best efforts. Looking to the future, if re-elected, for the district, I'd like to see the Longbourn and Bagot Road improvements completed, and then I will then turn my attention to improvements on Bagotown Road. For the parish, I would like to establish support for an elderly care system, as they have in St Clements, where volunteers assist the elderly in providing them with support which helps them meet their individual needs, lift GPs, filling in the forms, or just general advice. During the next term, I believe the state should focus on building up the economy and creating jobs for local people. This could be achieved by supporting small businesses through tax incentives, waiving state fees, or social security credits over a defined period. Our current industries need our continued support. In addition, we need to do this, and also, excuse me. In addition to this, we require diversification of the economy. And I think this can be achieved through Digital Jersey, which could provide many new job opportunities for local people, if given enough political support. In education, we need to concentrate on developing the core skills of English, mathematics and the sciences. We need to encourage the study of these subjects at university so that local students can come back to the island as teachers. This could be done by providing our local students with grants and a guarantee of employment in Jersey once qualified, on the condition that they work in Jersey for a certain period of time, which is a common business practice. With regard to immigration, I've always advocated that we should have a visa or work permit-based system, similar to that of Australia and Canada, whereby we bring in the skilled people that the island cannot currently provide, but we ensure that they train up their successors from locally qualified people, and this is strictly enforced, particularly within the public sector. Time does not allow me to outline the rest of my policies tonight, but I'd be happy to discuss them further. Thank you for electing me as your deputy for the last 2 terms, and I would be greatly honoured if you would support me for another term to enable me to continue serving the people of this district. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hawley. Good evening. I'm Peter. It's Peter Mann, the local radio, but show all depth and just that. I was out canvassing the other day. A woman poked her head out the door. She said, "You standing?" "Yes." "Are you mad?" I said, "Patently, yes, but not in the way you think I am." I'm mad about the way that our government has treated us. Referendum is a word for you to wrap your head around. Before the referendum, the voter turnout on this island was 46% at the last election, lower than in all 36 countries of the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development. It's embarrassing, really. The average voter turnout across those countries is 73%. In Belgium, Luxembourg, and Australia, over 90%. It does help with Australia, mind you, because they actually fine you if you don't vote. Perhaps you should consider that, right? Oh yeah, you have to pay more money, wouldn't you? Yeah, the current government is failing to engage the voter. The very fact that you actually turned up to see him is quite some miracle, because he said this was on, and a good few people haven't. So many disaffected people stay at home. And yet, up here are 2 people up here who have decided your socio-economic fate in the past, and there are up here 2 people who will, in the future, have an actual effect on your life. And yet, there's empty chairs in here. It shouldn't be that way. I read somewhere that the percentage of the electorate who feels satisfied with the connection that our government has with us is, guess what percentage? 0. That's shockingly embarrassing. They ask us what we want in a very expensive referendum, and then they ignore what you want. So imagine the schism that has opened up, the wound in the belief of the people, the electorate of this island, in the so-called democratic process that they ought to be involved with. It's going to take years to heal it, and I want to be a part of that healing process. I believe myself to be a change, a part of the vanguard for change that is coming your way. There are a great many very good people who inspire to stand for election by the recent very shabby way that your government has treated you. I believe myself to be one of those good people, and I hope that I can convince you of that. So what are some of the things that concern the electorate of Saviour District? Well, of course, Jeremy alluded to the traffic. We live in a parish that wraps itself around our capital city, and as such, the traffic flow, we've got to bear the brunt of most of it. Not only that, we have so many schools within our boundaries. We love more traffic on the road. Have we solved traffic problems? Well, we don't really. I can't make you any promises that I can't keep. However, I've got some ideas that might ease the problems. And if you ask a question, you'll have to come to that a bit later. Antisocial behaviour, that seems to be something that people mention on the doorstep. I've got an idea you might have seen on the TV the other day. I'm more than happy to wrap that one around you a little bit later. It's like this saying on my manifesto, all state policy must satisfy the 3-legged stool principle. Economic, can we afford it? Social, is it good for the people? And environmental, will it harm or enhance the beauty, ecology of our wonderful Statutory reform, nice little one. Successful Foe here back in 2000 said he believed that the role of senator should be abolished. The bailiff should no longer preside over the state assembly. There should be one general election every 4 years, and there should be a single central register of voters. Does the role of the senator still exist? 14 years later, yes. Are the constables still in situ? Yes, 14 years later. Does the bailiff still preside over the state's assembly? Yes, that's a deeply questionable role in these days. 14 years on, is there a single central register of voters? No. Election every 4 years? Well, we've got a general election, 3 years. It took 8 years from conception to opening to build the Channel Tunnel. It's taken 14 years and that hasn't even happened yet. I want to be a part of a vanguard of people that help that happen. Please, ask me some good questions. I hope to be able to give you some good answers. Thank you.
I'll volunteer microphone runner. Thank you. And thank you very much. Thank you very much to the three of you for speaking and for sticking to your time or even being briefer, which thank you very much indeed. We've got a fair amount of time then for questions. I think I'd like to ask the first person who would like to ask a question to put their hand up, please. I'll come here first and then there second. Thank you.
Mark Watkins from Saviour. Question I've got for the panel is, how do we encourage the turnout of the voters? Is there any mileage in moving to Saturday or even doing electronic voting? Over to you guys.
Okay. And Jeremy goes first. Yeah, keep that.
Yeah, thank you for this, Mr. Watkins. During the first year that I was re-elected, I actually volunteered to sit on the review of the public elections law. And when we went out to consultation to the public, we did explore many of these aspects. We did sample and suggest to the public perhaps moving the election day to the weekend. Actually, when we got responses back from the public, it didn't actually, to my surprise, it didn't seem to be such a favourable idea. People seemed to be quite happy for it to be on a Wednesday. It surprised me, but that was the public's response. However, my committee did change the law to allow pre-poll to occur on Saturday, so we have started doing some pilot schemes just to test what the appetite out there is. So my committee has been very hard working on these types of things. With regard to electronic voting, my committee did get approval to change the law that in future we will be allowed to do online register as they do in Guernsey. Unfortunately, what happened is that the parish websites are currently going under quite a substantial review, and that work stream was filtered into that. So unfortunately, it wasn't available for this election, but the work has been done. Voter turnout is always a struggle. One of the key things which was identified during that review was information. People wanted to know what candidates stood for, and that's why with my committee we worked so hard on the vote.je website to provide a central resource for people to be able to go and better research their candidates and see how they perform during the hustings. So certainly there is a lot of work that has been done. More work will need to be done, but at the end of the day, I think it's very important as politicians, if we want people to get out and vote, we have to be seen in the community, we have to be available to people. For example, during my first term, I did a surgery at the end of every month, so if anyone wanted to come and see me, there was that availability. And because I've always seen being a state member has to be a partnership with the community, because we are here to represent the views of the people of the district that we live in. And I've tried many different ways, whether it's through my flyering campaigns, whether it's through my surgeries, in order to do that. But at the end of the day, it is a partnership, and we have to work incredibly hard with the community and make ourselves available and be seen in order to do that. Thank you.
Peter.
I was at Georgetown Methodist Church, which I got a lady, well, a number of ladies, and this particular lady said, I don't vote, never go with it, that's that. I went, okay, why not? She said, well, what's the point? I said, couple of things in my view. People died in wars so that you could vote. Ironically, they also died in wars so that you would have the right to choose not to vote. So we can't make you. But with that attitude, just imagine Berlin 1982, East Germany. A couple of people standing in front of the wall saying, well, you don't know anything about that thing, are you? What's the point? We have to impress on people how important it is that they vote. Therefore, we have to engage with them to make it easier. I'm quite surprised, but no research has been done. Wednesdays it is. In my head, Saturdays, or even, dare I say, Sundays, we've got a bit extra time, you go with the rest of the dogs. But if we stay Wednesdays, then why not make it even more? So we're talking about Guernsey. I'm rather embarrassed. Guernsey seems to be ahead of Jersey rather a lot of the time. And as a Jersey, well, that rather embarrassing if you vote online, for example. There has been some question, but they can't yet, no?
They can register.
They can register online, they can't. At some point, ideally vote online, there could be some issue with security, and you can buy somebody's vote, that kind of thing. We don't want that. But we're at the stage where you've got these things, you put your fingerprint on it, and it will unlock your phone. So we're not too far off at the speed that technology is going for you to have your fingerprint logged somewhere in the island. You go and you go, that's me. I vote. It's possible. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but technology shifts forward. To engage them, well, I need to get to schools even more and explain to the young people how important it is. I did a talk at the Saviour's school a couple of days ago on their election registry. So we were electing their council. And it did occur to me that if, I think I mentioned this on BBC Jersey the other day, if we invite all secondary schools, say from year 9 upwards, to have their elections in the State's Chamber, they can elect their school council, they can debate in the Chamber. Hey, we can have a bailiff actually sitting there and adjudicating over one of the spare days in which they're saying he has many. We can engage people so they feel a passion for their island. And why not? We must do everything we can do to light a fire under the electorate, not literally be rid of it.
Thank you. I think people don't vote because they don't see the reason to, because their views aren't being listened to. We have an old system at the moment where we move from a committee system of government, which used to make all the decisions and pass them down to the individual committees for the presidents and the rest of the committee to carry out. We've lost that since we moved to ministerial government. So we have 10 wise men who've got proper legal powers to do whatever they wish to do. We can't actually, as in the past, have states' decisions to actually bind the hands of our ministers, because the individual ministers are a corporation sole, a legal entity to act in their own right. So what should we do? Well, I think we have to make voting more relevant, and in order to do that, I think that you have to adopt one of two systems, the carrot or the stick approach. And I think a carrot might well be to encourage opportunities for the island electorate to actually vote for their ministers on the basis of the policies that those ministers are going to be able to carry out. At the moment, you don't get a chance to do that. When the States reconvenes with the new government, it will be States members, half the House may be new members, who will actually decide who the new ministers are going to be. You don't even get a choice to determine who the chief minister is going to be. And under our new standing order provisions, we're going to be giving that individual the opportunity to force and to coerce and instruct other ministers to do what he or she thinks fit. Now, in my book, that adds up to a system where we've lost the democratic appeal of asking islanders to actually vote for their members. So that's one way that perhaps we could turn things around. Encourage people to actually vote for the ministers on the basis of the policies that they're going to carry out. On the stick side, I've seen other electoral systems whereby you're not elected unless you get a certain proportion of the vote. They even, in some places, take it a little stage further to make things a little bit more exciting, in enabling people to actually cast a vote against a person standing, rather than only casting votes for them. So with those two measures, I think that's two ideas that we haven't tried that might liven things up a bit.
Gentlemen, if you say a name before you speak,
Peter Rollins. Same question that I've asked at every Hustings meeting since college took over the bus service. When are we going to get back the magnificent bus service we had around this area before they took over? We used to be able to get to the parish hall, we used to be able to get to the hospital, we used to be able to get to the crematorium, we used to be able to get to Oakdale, all on the same bus. College took over, the bus disappeared. I had to pay £10 taxi to go and pay my rates, because for a month they had a bus service that you could get from Route Ray, get off at Snowhill, cross the road, get on the bus at the Lost Street, and get up to the parish hall. For 1 month, then they went back to the bus that goes up to Saviour parish hall, comes 5 minutes before the bus for Route Ray gets to Snowhill.
thank you.
I was asked by Constable Jackson when he was Minister of Transport, and we were also asked again by Clem Lewis whether we could get the bus users forum going again. We went round to all the people that had attended the bus users forum regularly every month. Every one of them said no, and every one of them said, and we're never going to vote again, because they never listen to what we say.
Thank you. Peter, I think that's a good start.
Thank you. Well, Peter, I'm glad I haven't been one of the people who asked that question over the past. How do you get the bus company to listen? The bus users forum have disintegrated, I gather.
Yes.
So, have they disintegrated because they don't feel their voice is being listened to, or have they disintegrated because they don't need the bus from TV?
They disintegrated because the politicians would not listen to what they had to say.
So what exactly would you like the politicians to do about it? Because this is what it's about for me. It's about
What
what
we'd
you do.
like is to get back to the Jersey bus system rather than the College and the Liberty bus.
So you'd
They
like,
actually get the buses for us rather than for them. And we'd also like the bus drivers to know exactly where they're going.
if you're trying to let them know, you've got a parachute accident.
I got on the bus the other day to go into town,
Yes.
and the bus driver ended up going back to Brazil.
This is not ideal, I will grant you that. I believe, because I've spoken to some people who work for the bus company, who there's quite a lot of disaffection within there, I think, with the way the whole thing is structured, the way it's going. To force a timetable on the brand new company that what they used to enjoy will be quite something. Whatever you do right for one person, you may do wrong for another person. It's really about getting a consensus of opinion, and really it's a shame the bus users forum stopped. You kind of got to keep banging your head against the wall in order to somebody to listen. There's a chance with the new intake, and I think there will be quite a substantial new intake comes every straight in, that you might get the voice listened to. Now, I've not dealt with this before. Sure, the other two gentlemen have had dealings with them before. I'd like to try, given half a chance, to talk some sense into them, to try and make it better, and try to find a compromise, because what is right for one isn't necessarily right for the other, but I'm willing to give it a go. As for the other two city politicians, maybe they've got a different answer, but I'd be willing to try for you.
the interesting thing is that we've got the bus company is a so-called community bus service. So by that, the contracts are written in such a way that if a number of members of the public decide that they'd like to have a bus service running along a particular route, what needs to happen in order to encourage the company to adopt that route is for enough people to actually pledge to support it. So that is all that needs to happen. It doesn't require politicians to go in there and to stretch their muscles or exercise their muscles or whatever to try and actually beat companies over the head. It's actually written into the contract. But the key issue is that the new bus company service will only run a route if it is economic. So we have to vote with our feet, mixing my metaphors. And if we write enough letters and pledge to support the service, then I'm pretty sure that the bus company will listen.
Can I just say,
No,
why would they
sorry, sir.
Why would they
Hang on, sir. Sorry, sir. Sorry. Excuse me, please. You're interrupting the speaker, and we're not having that. Okay, sorry. Thank you. You can have another minute if you need it. But sorry, please don't interrupt. Okay, thank you.
So the point that was being made is that why have we got some services and not other services? It's as simple as this. I mean, the existing services were pretty much taken over. Some of them are more economic than others. So the key issue, and it's been an issue that's been raised on the doorstep during my canvassing time, is can we have our bus service back to actually take people from a built-up area into town or up to the parish hall or whatever. It's in our hands, right? Let's organise a petition. Let's bang on the doors of the bus company, and I'm pretty sure that they'll be listening to us if we can actually pledge support in the greatest number.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Doyle. As I'm sure many of you know who've seen me, I'm one of the few states members that actually use the bus system on this island. And so I do sympathise with some of the issues I think at times we are poorly served, particularly on the number 2 route, which almost chooses which route it decides to follow depending on the day of the week. What I would say though is 2 things. First of all, the sustainable transport policy that was brought by the former Council of Ministers. Scrutiny did a very good review of that policy and they identified that it was underfunded by £1 million. Now that policy incorporated many different things, but one of the key objectives was to increase bus usage by about 15%, while I believe it all reduced traffic by about 15%. The key thing there was the policy was underfunded, and that's why I didn't support it in the States, because I don't see the point of supporting policies when we know we won't be able to fund them properly. What's always struck me, which has been a suggestion made by Deputy Harisier, because he's studied other smaller jurisdictions, one alternative bus service is almost like a bus-taxi combo service, where you have hubs within different areas which act to circulate around different places that people want to go. It's a hybrid system. And this is very successful in very small jurisdictions, but also in particularly rural jurisdictions, where, as has been highlighted, you may not always get the flow of people that you may need in order to sustain one particular route. The way that technology is going, this could be facilitated perhaps by some sort of application to identify where someone needs to be picked up, where they want to go, and that could be facilitated in a certain way. But it does require a certain different type of thinking in the State Assembly, because the way that people conduct themselves don't always suit the previously established bus system, and I would be very supportive of this type of hybrid system, which would better serve the community. Thank you.
Thank you. No questions. Thank you.
I don't think I'll need the mic. Mr. Birch, I live in the parish of St Saviour in this district. My question is on the composition of the states. 2 parts of the question. The first one is not whether you, the candidates, think that the constable should be in and out, but will they support the outcome of the referendum, yes or no? The second part is reference senators. Do they support the island-wide mandate that us as voters bring in senators to the states? We give the senators island-wide mandates. Do they support that part of the composition of the states? Thank you.
Dr. Hamilton.
Okay, I was on the radio today. It really depends on how the question is phrased. We're being asked at the moment, do we support the constables to be members of the House by virtue of their office? And I think if the office is going to remain unchanged, then I think my answer to that one will probably be no. If indeed the office were to be changed, because I think constables don't do what they did in the past, times have moved on. I'll give you a couple of examples. They don't have the policing function. It's the chef of the police. They retain the title, but no policing function at all. When we had David Cresswell's review of the functions between the parish and the centre a number of years ago, the parish welfare went to the centre. We're left with 2 or 3 other things that the parish constables do. Collection of rubbish, maintenance of parish roads. Both of those have been spoken about by my colleagues as perhaps potential converts to a centralised system. So I think it's time for us to be a little bit more real and grown up in the question, and to actually ask ourselves a slightly different question. If the constables' role could be changed, what would the constables' role be changed to? If it's to represent the district after holding parish assemblies, so that they're acting as a spokesperson in the states on issues that are relevant to states business, then I think obviously these states should retain the voice in the constables. If it's an automatic position, I think it's not quite the same thing. In equal measure, the senators, the island-wide mandate is a cracking idea, but it doesn't work. Many of the senators that we have at the moment don't actually take up ministerial posts. Indeed, there's a body of opinion that suggests that an incumbent member of the House to the position of minister should actually gain some experience in a deputy's role before they move up. That was the original case for having senators in the first place, and we had the continuity question by keeping 6 out of sync with the elections to ensure that the states weren't left with all new members. So I think both of those questions are difficult ones. I support an island-wide mandate, but again, under a revised role for ministers. If we do it that way, then I think it would make sense. But the way we have it at the moment, I think it's probably a no for senators as well.
Yes, thank you very much. And to answer the question directly about supporting the result of the referendum, I have always said that I'm here to represent the views of the people of this district. So I will go with whatever the views of the people of this district is, because that's the people that I would be there to represent, regardless of what my personal view is. Now, that's not necessarily the same as what the rest of the island will do. I wish to make that very clear. But as I said, I'm here to represent the views of the people of this district. As I've said many a time, I think that the clothing proposals were very well thought out proposals which called for a single class of member, all elected on the same day for a period of 4 years. In supporting that, that would mean an end to the role of the senator and the island-wide mandate, and I appreciate that that is something which many islanders feel very, very passionate about. But I think in order to get a modern and democratic system which still values the parish system, I very much feel that the Clothier route is the way to go. This wouldn't prevent constables standing separately as states members, and I think 10 times out of 10, if a constable stood separately to be a states member, the parish they stood would elect them. So I really don't understand this great concern that if the constables weren't in there, automatically they wouldn't get in the states. I really disagree with that. I think they most likely would, because why would you elect someone to be your constable and then not elect them to be in the States at the same time. It doesn't really make any sense to me. But the principle of having every member in a legislature representing approximately the same number of people has to be a modern democratic principle which really we should strive to achieve. Thank you.
I think we're going to answer your questions, Birch, with what I'm going to say. My personal belief is in an ideal world, we have an island mandate. But if you can imagine the Hustings, when let's say 70 candidates turn up for the job, we'd have to pack a picnic lunch just to get through all the speeches, and you don't want that. I'm thinking larger representative districts, proportionally representative, in my ideal world, electing states members on equal footing on an area mandate. In this case, the idea of having the constables in the states works for me because the members of the states of Jersey would represent the views of the people in their area, and the constables would take care of the parish business. They'd be the voice. In the current system, people, like deputies, should represent the people. It will make them listen on the street. And then I think, this is personally my view, the constable should stay in the parish hall and should administer the parish hall very ably. And then the deputy liaises with the constable. What do they want in the chamber? Another idea I have is, yeah, sure, it's we all the constable did. Let's sit them down in their nice shiny seats. Let's give them a say but no vote. That way they can express what they want and the rest of the elected chamber can decide. These are the ideals. So as it stands at the moment, I don't think the constable should stay in, but in a system that changes, I believe there might be a place for it. But I'll tell you something for free. I'm going to quote Einstein now, which is quite something that will be easy. Einstein said, you cannot solve a problem at the same level of thinking that caused it. It's my way of saying the states cannot pull themselves out of the mire they're in by their own thinking. Claudia gave them a heads up and they didn't follow it. I would suggest, I very rarely would suggest the states spend money outside the island if you can solve it here, but I would suggest that we put in some expertise in the UK to have a look at our electoral system, strip it right down, give 3 options, we send it out to the electorate for the final referendum, so I truly believe, what's the point in asking the public all the time what they think they're not listening to them? You're supposed to give your electors to make decisions after all, but just this one time, because it's about the states chamber, what we do is we ask them, we send it out to the electorate, they say we want that, and then it is legally binding, because there's too many self-interested people in that chamber who don't want it changed. And we don't exist for our own government, we exist for the people after all. It should be down to you to decide. Absolutely, yes, I will follow the results of any referendum, because I believe that you believe in what you believe in.
Gentleman back there, and then the gentleman here, thank you. Microphone just come in, name first.
Mr. Chairman, gentlemen, our island has always prided itself on being debt-free, but we are now pursuing a course where we are going to borrow millions. And in the recent budgets, we learned that there could be a deficit of up to £90 million. How do the candidates propose filling that black hole?
Thank you for your question. 2 years ago, I sat on a scrutiny review that looked at the spending plans, the 3-year spending plans that the Council Ministers proposed. During that time, the scrutiny panel clearly identified that the income forecasts were clearly overly optimistic and overly inflated, and that the states would not get the income which they were anticipating. In fact, we even felt so strongly about it that scrutiny proposed amendments to that plan in order to strip out some of that spending. Unfortunately, we didn't get the support of the Assembly, and we find ourselves 2 years down the line exactly where scrutiny said we were going to be, unfortunately. So my first answer in that regard would be listen to scrutiny to begin with, and not spend as much money when we know that we're not going to get it. As for raising revenue, one aspect which we know we're going to have to look at is, as the Social Security Minister has identified, is we are going to need to increase the contributions paid into the Social Security Fund. One policy which I'm advocating, which I stand on, is in order to do that and meet some of that cost, is to raise the cap on the Social Security ceiling, and I advocate that over increasing percentages on employee and employers, and the reason for that is proportionately it hurts those people on lower incomes in order to do that, and at this time with the economy as it is, I don't think that's good economic sense, and therefore one solution is to raise the cap on Social Security ceiling. Another way in which we could obtain more funding for the states is there was a very good proposition brought by Senator Alan Brecken a couple of years ago, looking at the amount that the company fees actually paid into the island. Now, even increasing those fees by something like £100, it would generate millions for the states, and it would still leave Jersey as being competitive compared to our other jurisdictions. So this again is another policy which you'll see in my manifesto, which is something I'm advocating. However, it's not always just about taxation and getting more money in. There are efficiencies which can be made within the states, which again is why I'm supporting a lot of the e-government stuff in order to reduce bureaucracy, get departments communicating better with each other, and therefore reducing administration costs of various systems within the states. And read my manifesto for more details. Thank you.
Don't tax, save. What we've got is these debate all around the leaky bucket. Many of the folks, they punched into themselves. They're pouring your water into it and running around while it leaks everywhere. Too much is flooding out. So, save. There are ways too many layers of management in the public sector. Now, I'm not talking about stripping out some of the ground troops, teachers, nurses, so on. We're talking about the amount of bureaucracy is appalling. Did you know? You see this on a piece of A4 paper. For it to get from one siloed department to another siloed department costs £8 plus for one piece of paper. Mercifully, government's on its way, so shoot it through and get a lot cheaper. But that just goes to show how many layers and levels it has to go through. Each department should be talking to each other a lot more. Now, there is moves in place for that to happen. So we should have some of those layers. A lot of people, there are some people will be politicians, so-called political parties who aren't coming to the finance industry. The finance industry contributes 40% to our economy. You best be nice to it, I think. Help it along as much as possible. Give you some ideas of other people in the sectors that contribute to our economy. Now, if you add up the construction industry, hotels, guest houses, etc., all 76 pubs, all 130 restaurants, why are you ever stuck somewhere to eat? If you had their contribution to the economy, this isn't to decline their efforts, they're up to just 11%. So you come into the finance sector. There's a danger, though, of course, we've got to be prepared for. Finance did end by 3% for the 6th year running. This is because bank deposits have dropped from 260 billion to 138 billion pounds. Assets under management dropped from 241 to 200 billion. The number of live companies pretty stagnant. There are 33,400 in 2008, 33,200 in 2014. This is why we dropped to 3 decades alone, we dropped to 60 cents. Interest rates of 0.5% do not help us. We must boost the tourism industry. We cannot rely so heavily on finance. Be kind to it, but boost this beautiful island, pull more into our economy. Please ask a question about tourism later. Thank you.
my own private finances, I fundamentally agree with the questioner that the best position to be in is one where you don't have any debt. And he's absolutely right in actually telling us that the amount of debt that Ireland is facing has actually grown massively over the last 3 years. And it's going to grow even larger. There are other projects that are still on the drawing boards, another £278 million of capital borrowings to actually sort out our harbour and airports. So it's not going to stop. We've actually allowed the finance minister to actually drive a wedge into our borrowings and to actually encourage the banks and other bodies to lend money. It can only get worse. So what can we do? Well, there aren't really many than 3 ways that we can actually consider. We can cut services, and the department that I'm responsible for has given up some 19% of its monies and budget in savings over the years in response to the calls from the finance minister to make those savings, whilst at the same time health and social services, we're not depriving these departments, we shouldn't deprive them of the essential monies to carry out these necessary services, but their budgets have grown by 9%. So where does it stop? So we can cut services, but then we have to decide and agree which services they're going to be. And that inevitably means challenges and volunteers, or pressed volunteers, because nobody likes giving up their departmental budget. At the other end of the scale, we've got rises in taxation. So it's been stated that perhaps, as in the UK, maybe the 20% rate that we've had since the war needs to be looked at, certainly for higher tax rate payers. So those are the 2 broad ends of the spectrum. But I think there's perhaps a third way, and that's somewhere in the middle. I think we need to be a little bit more innovative in finding ways to actually do the works and to find the fundings by looking more creatively at how we actually volunteer to do services. And perhaps there's a whole range of kind of community issues that are being funded that could quite easily be called upon as part of your community service, thereby saving monies and helping ourselves to actually get money. Needs thinking, but those are the only 3 options, and it won't be easy. I think all 3 probably need to be looked at.
Thank you. Thank you. Name, please.
Andrew Allen. I'd like to, Mr. Chairman, if I could return to the questioning relating to states reform. Sorry. I'd like to return to the question of states reform, if I may. And I think it's very significant that there have been a lot of questions on this tonight. I'd like to pose it to the candidates. So the reason there have been so many questions is that the electorate are pretty fed up. It's been grossly mismanaged by the current States Assembly, especially recently. I think that the referendum question we're going to have on the constables is totally out of date. It was answered in the option 1, option 2, option 3 referendum, which the States Assembly ignored. And I can remember, people might sound a bit long in the tooth, but I can well remember going to a packed St Saviour's Parish Hall many, many moons ago when the then Senator Pierre Horsfall was President of the Policy and Resources Committee, and the specific reason for going to the Parish Hall was that that committee was giving a roadshow round the island to ask the question, do you favour the constables in the States? And here we are, 10 years later, maybe more, and we're asking the same question again. I'd like to ask a couple of questions, if I may, and I hope you think that they're related. I believe that the public are fed up because the States Assembly aren't going to change their makeup as quickly as they need to. I think they get bogged down in the minutiae.
I'll ask you to ask a question.
Okay. And the question is, do the candidates think improving the economy is more important than states reform, States Assembly reform? And my second question is, that do the candidates believe that it would be a good idea in this new States Assembly, which is going to last for 3.5 years as opposed to 3, wouldn't it be a good idea if in their strategic plan that is introduced at the beginning of the new States Assembly, that they delay any form of reference to states reform for at least 2 years and get on with the important stuff in this island?
Boy, that's a question, Andrew. I think I may have answered it already. The States Chamber cannot decide on its own future, because if any opinion, the public opinion, is directed towards the States Chamber, and it doesn't like it, it effectively goes squirrel, and then hopes you don't notice it sometime down the line. But you do, you don't forget. I mean, what is the point of asking the same question again and again and again? If you keep doing what you've always done, you'll keep getting what you've always got. It is pathetic and rather embarrassing. I will say, I'm not a member of that chamber. I'd like to be. We externalise it. We ask people externally, how do you think it should be made up? We then ask the electorate, ABC, legally binding it, everyone in the chamber doesn't get a mention or a word on it, and then we follow the recommendations that are given to us for the final time. The chamber itself has spent way too long navel-gazing, talking about itself. Every time the Assembly meets and discusses itself, these are valuable minutes of your money and time that aren't spent discussing the things that really matter to you. I mean, it's almost like it's in this lovely panelled room while the rest of the public try and get on with their lives outside, talk about themselves, argue among themselves like pathetic school children too much of the time. And meanwhile, everybody outside that chamber is going, what is going on in there? It's no wonder people are disaffected. So, once and for all, I think we reform the States Chamber, done. And then we start concentrating on the issues in a balanced and democratic way, the way that you would like your money to be spent. Thank you.
I think some of the difficulties of the reform packages not getting through have been because we put off the discussions until the last moment. So I think somewhat perversely, perhaps to some of you, I think any discussion of reform should take place inside the first 2 years, in fact probably even faster than that, in order to nail the issues once and for all. If we put it off for 2 years, then what will happen? Nothing will happen for 2 years, and then in the final 2 years of the States we'll be back to exactly the same kind of haggling that's characterised previous States Assemblies, when we all know that we're running out of time, that we actually pledged to come forward with a reform package, and we haven't delivered. So it's a race. So I think it's better to do things early and nip them in the bud, albeit that we've been trying for quite a long time. But to be fair, I think we have to take into account the machinery of government that we've got. Do we want the decisions to be taken by fewer people? Because why then have we got the makeup of the States Assembly that we have, where everyone has an equal voice? We can actually go in that direction if that's decided by the public, but I don't think that will be democratic. So what we're all trying to do is actually work together to actually find a machinery of government reform that allows us to work in a more efficient fashion, and I seriously think that it should be done sooner rather than later. As to the importance of the economy rather than reform, I think the two go hand in hand. We can't, without a suitable machinery of government, actually have the confidence in those ministers or those persons of the states, or indeed other members of the public, working in partnership with those members, to actually make the improvements to the economy in a way that sticks and is fair on everybody. It's not just my island, it's all of our island, and I think we have to find ways to actually work together. So all of these issues are important. But if for any members who haven't read the Preparing Our Future document, I think you should go online and have a look, because it does set out for the first time a proper, coherent, comprehensive framework for actually cutting through a lot of this nonsense and finding ways to properly work together to solve all of our problems together.
Mr. Gallagher, as I outlined in my opening speech, I said one of the main priorities that the state should focus on is the economy, in particular supporting small businesses. We know from the economic analysis that the hardest time for new businesses is between their second and third year, which is why I believe the state should be looking at introducing policies which treats new businesses after their first 5 years, with perhaps by giving social security credits, working the already established scheme that we have at the moment, by offering some sort of tax incentives in order to support these businesses through that period, but by also possibly waiving state charges, such as company registration fees, all these types of things, which could be done, which actually, in some sense, are cost neutral, because if they were put in place, people wouldn't be taking the risk of establishing these businesses. And therefore, I'm very much behind the notion of focusing on the economy, because job growth has got to be our priority, particularly for younger people. But I wouldn't keep that just out on its own. I think education has to go hand in hand with any priority that the states pursue, in particular focusing on digital skills and on the core skills of English, mathematics and science, because that's, they did 3 core reviews looking at our education system, and what it demonstrated is that in those particular areas, whilst we do quite well with those perhaps who have great skill in these particular areas, what we need to focus on are perhaps those who are perhaps at the bottom end, those who are struggling. That's where we need to concentrate our efforts in the education system, because we need to be producing students who have the abilities in order to provide for themselves and be able to compete in the job market. Also, one of the top priorities has got to be all the reforms of the health department, in particular looking at the hospital, as well as the reforms coming forward about the GP services. So those would be my particular priorities looking at the states going forward. With regards to state reform, the states is divided up into different areas, and within the remit of the Privileges and Procedures Committee, reform is going to be an aspect which they're going to have to look at. But what I would like to see is more focus on supporting members, raising the quality of member once they're in the states, therefore delivering a better public to the service, and that's what I believe the Privileges and Procedures Committee should focus on in this particular next term of the states. Thank you.
Another question, please? Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Sam. My question is long-term care. If you're a householder, you're paying up to 50,000 a year, whatever, up to 50,000. If you don't own a house, you don't do anything, you get everything for nothing. We already pay Social Security for this. Is it right? Is it not time that the states look at it and say everybody has an insurance or pays into a fund to cover it? So I think it's totally wrong. We have to sell our houses. Social Security put out a pamphlet, you don't have to, but at the end, when you've gone, they will recover the money and then the audacity to charge you interest on top of it. And we've already paid like a lot more here, and it's time that it's totally out.
I've lost track of starting. Rob,
Yeah, I think broadly right, but should there be a fund? Well, that's exactly what there's going to be. Every individual is going to be expected to pay an increased contribution into the fund to build up money to actually pay for long-term care. But in addition, what's being stated is that for those who have actually not been a burden on society or the parish or the state, rather than encourage them to sell up their homes entirely. What's been suggested is that perhaps they remortgage their house or a contribution towards the first £50,000 of care, and then the remainder of the sum will be funded by the states. So I think it's a halfway house situation. In an ideal world, yeah, I think Mr. Ranick is be right. We'd be thinking, we would have thought about the setting up of such a fund much earlier in our working lives, perhaps after the war, or whatever, even earlier when the social security system came in. But we didn't. Conditions have changed. Long-term care is getting more and more expensive as people live longer. And that's the difficulty that we all have to face. There are perhaps other ways of actually dealing with the equity issue, but in doing that, I mean, we can't really kind of escape the fact that some people have behaved perhaps more responsibly than others, and unfortunately it's exactly the same case with people who find themselves in the lucky position of earning more to be paying more tax. So somebody's got to foot the bill, and I think what's come forward from Social Security is probably the least worst package that kind of minimises the damage, if you like, to those who have actually looked after themselves. But the state will be finding ways to actually contribute to all of our long-term care funding, and I think probably it's not a bad position that we're in, even though some of us will have to raise that £50,000 contribution.
Tony, thank you for your question. Yeah, it was a very difficult debate because, as you outlined, the snag into the new system was this £50,000, which you're asking, in the main, pensioners in order to fund. Now, I don't know about the rest of you, but I certainly don't come across that many pensioners in this district who just have £50,000 lying around in their bank accounts. However, it was the right thing to do to incorporate that scheme, because at least for those who were struggling, who might have to sell their entire home, at least it provided some sort of cover for those people who were already there within the system. However, you're quite right that that figure, that sum, does need to be looked at and reassessed, because I don't think, as you pointed out, that it's fair for people who have worked hard, who haven't been a burden on the state, who, sacrificed many things in order to have their own home, to then lose that all when the costs come to the end. There is another point, however, in that we need to reform our health and social services in order to allow people who are able, and it's not everyone, but who are able to live longer in their own homes, because that's where the majority of people would like to be. Now, it's not possible in every case, but there is reform that needs to happen. All the different things of assisted living, of support whilst people are still in their own homes, and whilst there is a network there through things like family nursing and home care, there are still great reforms that need to happen in this particular area in order to support more people being able to live in their own homes when they get older in life. It's a very difficult subject. I've had many constituents who have come to me in this particular regard. I am grateful for the new scheme that the states have adopted, but there is more work that does need to be done in this area. Thank you.
Tony, your question summed up the whole squeezed middle rather wonderfully. Everybody who's trying really hard to roof over their own head, work their entire life, pay their dues, are at some point penalised for the fact that they've done it, which is outrageous. We have an ageing population. Currently, there's an idea there's a big pot which is dipped into to help the ageing population. In fact, for people in employment who are effectively putting the money into the pot, it comes out immediately for each pensioner. The way that the balance is going, we're going to have many more elderly people. I have every intention of being one of them. It will require work of two people, less people, younger, working to feed, so you have to take more money out of them in order to sustain the system. So it's getting mighty broken. Right now, particularly in the care homes, they're taking the money you invest in your property to look after you. That doesn't seem fair if you pay your dues. Surely at the end of it all, you should be looked after. There is in my book, I don't do young and old, I don't do tall short, I don't do that thing, I just do people. I don't think of them as youngsters, they're people, elderly people, who will have a right for our society to look out for us, so we can have shelter, warmth, food in our belly, love in our life. And at the end of the days, if you're selling what is your investment in your life, in any way, you could be mortgaging it, then somehow it's like you're being robbed of all that you worked for. That doesn't seem right. It's a bit like income tax being paid on your pension. Didn't you already pay that? Didn't you already stick your money, put it in there and say, pay tax on what I've earned? That's equal aside for me, and oh, guess what? You're paying it again, it's outrageous. In an ideal world, you keep your property, you pass it on to your family, and then the state will look after you. There has to be a way of finding a way of filling this part. Now the thing is, if we start now, I'm afraid that Tony, you're probably not going to benefit from it by the time there's enough money in the pot. But something certainly has to. I hope you do 120, honestly do. But it's going to take quite a while for it to work out. I hope there is a solution. I'd like to be able to think it through if it's all possible.
Another question. Gentleman here.
vote.je. I notice that we have a Methodist minister as our chairman tonight, and what I would like to ask of the candidates is what place do they feel there is for faith or religion within politics in Jersey?
Thank you very much. What role does faith or religion play in politics in Jersey? Now, I've always said previously before that I do believe in the separation of the church and the state. That does not mean to say, however, that those from a religious background don't have something very great to offer towards that. We know, for example, and it's not because I've got a Methodist minister beside me, previously in the past from the Methodist movement, a lot of rights have come forward from people of that conviction in order to protect the more vulnerable in society, and that would be based on their own principles and values. I think it's like every opinion, it's got a place, it has something to offer, it shouldn't be marginalised, but it has to be balanced against the views of the rest of society and how we all feel as a community towards whatever policy we're looking at. Whether that's looking at ethical business, whether that's looking at abortion or euthanasia, all these different types of things. I think that religion definitely does have its place and it has something to offer, but I think that equally valuable are secular views as well. Thank you.
There is no such thing as a correct opinion. Quite simply, an opinion is an opinion held personally, and you can argue your side of that opinion. It doesn't make it right, it's just what the consensus is. And is there a place for religion in politics, faith? I don't know. I think that any faith, any people with strong values and convictions who can help the community as best they can, absolutely should and do. I think it's a wonderful thing. But in the chamber, no. In the chamber, we should be acting upon the populace's beauty general. And if there's a strong enough faith, it's the whole, I'll bring up the subject now, it's in my comment later, of gay marriage. Whatever the definition of that is. Now, in my view, We're all equal. We all should be able to do whatever we want to do with our lives from beginning to end. We decide our own fate. Other people may not agree with the way that we choose to live our lives, but they're our lives to live. And so, in the first instance, provided we sort out the law, then absolutely, let people go on and live their lives. However, I don't believe that any church should be made to marry anybody, because that's their belief. People should go and follow their own beliefs. And so, it's a place in society, absolutely, for any faith. And faith is some wonderful work. So, absolutely, but within politics, you can't make anybody do anything from a religion in order to be in the chamber. So, in the wider world, absolutely yes. In politics, no.
So, who came first, our religious forefathers or the politicians? I'm not sure. But I think one thing for me is that religious views are really there to help people to set out their own moral code in order to lead better lives, not only for themselves but for other people. I'd like to think the same thing applied to the motives that politicians kind of apply when they stand for election. And I think in the main we generally do. But you've only got to look at the news items where you see kind of politics and religion being kind of bound up in ways that suit neither end of the spectrum. So I think I'm with the other two speakers here in suggesting perhaps the better way is to keep the two apart. And pushed forward strongly from each direction so that we get the best out of everybody for themselves and for the communities they live in.
I'll keep introducing myself. Thank you for the question. Any other questions? Thank you, Sylvia.
Sylvia Twishy, Saviour. You're bringing in a law that children have to wear helmets when they ride their bikes. Why wasn't it brought in that everybody should? Because I think all people should have to wear a helmet when they're on a bike, and I think it's a lot more encouraging for children if they see their parents wearing a helmet. And also, I think all bikes, why is it that they don't have a bell? Because they'll come up behind you if you're on the promenades and you don't hear them, and there's something that almost knocks you over.
So, as a parent of 5 children, we got on the bicycles, I put a helmet on. I showed parental responsibility. I don't know if I need a law to make me show my parental responsibility. Now, in essence, I think everybody should wear a cycle helmet. One, we have to legislate to make that happen, and quite right, I think protecting the young is very important. They're very disinformed at this point, but I'm sure that headway would have a huge argument for actually coming into law, because I think it's a wonderful idea. It's that all as it stands, how do you make people do what you want them to do is a huge thing. I mean, once
in the cars.
Sorry, say that?
It was a law that made people
yes. Perhaps you could look at the whole getting young people to wear cycle helmets by law as dipping our toe in the ocean of just trying to sway the grown-ups who should know better anyway to put a cycle helmet on. There was a time when motorbikes, when everybody reserved their right not to wear a crash helmet, and eventually they did. There was a time, can you remember a time? You could imagine the time when you wouldn't smoke in a pub. And now, the whole notion, if you watch any drama on the TV, it just looks very strange when somebody does. Things change. Change is inevitable, except from a vending. And I would really like to hope that that is possible. So just perhaps we talk to the authorities, see how the children's helmets are going, and move toward a way of keeping our population safe. But of course, the argument can also be they want the right to choose what they do with their own brain. On the downside, it's not them, has to pay the monthly payment. And that's a real downside of something, you know, that really costs the state a great deal of money for their care and will affect their family deeply. So there is something to be said for it. I'd be more in favour of holding that happen, yes.
Yeah, I don't think there's much more to add to that. I mean, basically, Mr. Clinton was right. If the state, which is all of us, are there and required to actually pick up the pieces when unprotected heads are damaged, then there is a moral right and duty on all of us to actually toe the line to wear protection. It happens in other areas. We're talking of bringing in laws to protect ourselves from alcohol and smoking and all the rest of it. So it's a common issue. If the state, which is all of us, are going to pick up the price and the cost of the damage done, then we actually owe it to those persons who will be funding the damage to be respectful of the safety codes.
Yes, thank you. When I was 18 years old, I just had my brake blocks changed. I was coming home from Holia down Leverine. I had been used to jamming them on immediately. I did that this time, and it is only because I was wearing a cycle helmet that I am still here today. So I'm completely sold on how valuable cycle helmets are, and I didn't need a law to tell me to do that. With regards looking at the 14-year-old aspect of it, when Andrew Green brought it to the States, I think one of the key things behind that was, if we bring it into children, for those parents who need that extra bit of help in order to get their children to wear a cycle helmet, they have something to back them up, not that they should necessarily need it, but we've got it there now. And also, by making it a habit, making it a normal behaviour that when you are on a bicycle, you put a helmet on, like when you are in a car, you put the seatbelt on, all these types of things. It's about, it was a law to change behaviour, which is not always necessarily the easiest thing to do, but it's completely the right step forward. There was an argument from scrutiny arguing about how other people, other road users, treat those with and without helmets, and there was conflicting evidence on how helmets, whilst they are obviously better for people who have an impact, it's the question of how do other road users treat people when they're wearing helmets and when they're not wearing helmets. If you want more details, I recommend speaking to Daniel Wimberley, the former Deputy St Mary's. He can give you a very, very good discussion about it. I think, however, at the moment, whilst it was right to bring it in for children, I think we should keep the situation under review. Hopefully, over time, it will become habit and it will become normal. And if not, and if there are some accidents, then perhaps you're quite right to say, now we need to do it for adults as well. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
My name is Mark, and the question is, what are the county's views on the companies that trade in Jersey, take their profits away and don't pay no tax?
Yeah, that's a short one. It shouldn't happen. I think we've taken some steps to stop it happening. We need to take more steps to ensure that local business, local trade is at the top of the tree when it comes to sorting out the economy.
Yeah, thank you for this. It's actually in my manifesto talking about dealing with this particular aspect. It is that argument between the Boysons to Grishies aspect of locally owned companies pay tax here, foreign owned companies don't pay tax here. What I think we need to do is draft legislation so that companies operating within the island, and perhaps you might have exemptions for financial services, that there is a way in which the tax law can be worded in order to capture these things. Now, it's been very difficult, and they've looked at various aspects, including property taxes, in order to capture this at the moment. But there does need to be more political will to re-establish this particular area, because it's deeply unfair, it's not competitive with local businesses, and therefore I think it's absolutely right that it should be tackled as something on my manifesto that I pledged to work on. Thank you.
It's gross. It's if they're not competing against Amazon enough, they have to compete on the high street in an unlevel playing field, people who can just basically make more money, and so it should absolutely stop. Everybody should pay the same level of tax, whether they're local or whether they're brought into the island. They do well out of us, so they should pay the same level. I'm astonished nothing's been done about it so far. It seems pretty obvious to me. Level the playing field, because if you don't support local businesses, then there's another huge chunk of the economy to walk away. You've got to give them a chance, and there isn't enough of a chance to feed the massive, we've noticed already, diminishing number of local businesses. So yeah, level the playing field, pay the same fair rate, and the Russians and the voices of this world can survive, but good luck to them. Get the omnibus later.
Yeah, oh, fair enough. Any other questions, sir? No, thank you. In that case, what perhaps we might do then is just ask each candidate to give their final word. 2 minutes? 2 minutes, you've been told from the ring over there. So we'll start in reverse order, maybe. Repeat first, then Jeremy, then.
Thank you. Great questions, by the way. If you vote for me, I don't want to be because I'm a Jerseyman. I am very proud. If you vote for me, I wouldn't want to be because I was that bloke on the radio who used to wake you up. That's what it was, probably. If you vote for me, I don't want to be because you've heard that as a cognitive hypnotherapist. I've helped hundreds of people in life far more at peace with themselves. But I am proud of it. If you vote for me, I want to be because you believe that a man like me, a man who has dedicated his life to helping others feel better, can help you. You'll help me. I promise that I will stay connected to your wants and needs. I will listen to you and act upon your best interests. I'll hold a monthly meeting where we can openly discuss, debate the issues affecting you. It'll be great if people turn up for that. What troubles you in the marriage? Bash some ideas around, and I can take it into the chamber. I will hold initially a weekly surgery, we'll see how that goes. What I'll do is basically is accompany in a chat at the Human Centre. I think they'll allow me. Pop in, ask questions, see if we can help. How about that I work towards the foundation of Saviour Community Trust, being run by an independent panel of trustees? That'd be a good idea, wouldn't it? The role of the trust would be to assist those in the parish that need and community projects that need funding for the improvement of the lives of those who live to save. For the record, I believe all parishes should have one. It'd be a great idea. Please cast your vote for a happy, healthy, positive future in mind for the next Mr. Clinton, and help me be the difference that makes the difference. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been an honour and a pleasure to be able to serve this community in the States for my past 2 terms. As many of you will be aware, I do have a track record. I do have my votes. I am there in the State Assembly representing this community. I'm also seen and take part in this community, whether that's at part of the schools, as part of the Battle of Flowers Association. I'm there, happy to muck in and be as part of the community as everyone else. In that sense, I'm as much an ordinary person as everyone else. My politics is about being fair, looking after Middle Jersey, and looking after local people. That's what I've stood on, that's what I've always stood on, and I'd be very grateful if you were to carry on supporting me in delivering for you in the States. Thank you very much.
As the Senior Deputy, I think I've demonstrated my experience, ability and determination over the years. I'm not afraid of making difficult decisions, and I've always expressed my views directly and taken an independent line on policy issues. I'm standing for re-election as I believe that I still have much to offer the district, the parish and the island. If you want a frank, fair and honest candidate who's been there a while and proved himself, then vote.je, your #1 candidate for St Saviour District #1. Thank you.
We're going to say thank you, Peter and Jeremy and Rob, for sharing, answering the questions. I think I've had a fair stab answering the questions. We're grateful to you for that. I'm sure there'll be lots of opportunities for us to take them up on the issues in the future. But so I think if we could give all of them a round of applause and thank them for thank you for coming and a safe journey.
Ladies and gentlemen, just before you disappear, I'm sure you'll agree, and could you show your appreciation not only to Denise, who has kept our meeting in time and on schedule, but also to the Reverend Bulls for agreeing so kindly to come and chair so impartially our meeting tonight.